here with me.
You have one of the new students.
Yes, with
Okay,
me. Yeah.
the person is with you. You are sharing your device.
Yes, sir.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what we can do for today. 24 people in class. It's good to start with. Whilst we wait for the rest to join. The topic for today is actually chapter 7, no, chapter 8 of your textbook. It's just a follow-up on the previous chapter. So the whole of the two chapters are on one main subject matter, which is overheads. From chapter 7, we have looked at overheads, allocation, and apportionment. And apportionment, we looked at primary apportionment and secondary apportionment. And by now, everybody should be sure of what it is when we say primary apportionment, secondary apportionment, and allocation. And just before I forget, there's a very simple assignment posted on your platform, which you need to do and submit. I think you have today, tomorrow, it's 3 days. Just a quick, very quick one. Very simple assignment. So you can even finish it today before you sleep. And the main thing there is not really about how you are able to calculate certain figures, because that one is not your level of learning. That one, even GHS, SHS people can be taught to do that. So what I'm really testing is your ability to use the necessary tools to actually carry out that exercise. And what I mean by necessary tool, you know it, that is spreadsheet. So it's very highlighted requirement of the assignment. You can go and check after the lecture. You can even check right now. Okay, so that's just by the way. So we are today going to build on what we have learned already about overhead, which is allocation, primary apportionment, secondary apportionment. That's the process, the overhead analysis process. We go through all these steps to get the overhead, the production overhead, absorbed into the product. You remember the argument we made from the beginning that per the school of thought of absorption costing, at least production indirect costs. We understand that they are indirect costs. We cannot fully and directly trace them to the product. But because they are production-related overheads, they are so close to the product that it will make sense for us to add, in a more accounting terms, to capitalize those costs as part of the cost of the product, the cost of inventory. And we go through the process of first creating cost centers in the production department, and then allocating those costs that we can say that for you, this cost center, this cost is solely and directly attributable to you. That's allocation. Then there could be some other general costs, common costs, borne between the so-called cost centers, which we need to share. The process of sharing those costs among them is what we refer to as apportionment, also known as distribution. And when we are sharing the general overhead cost to the benefiting departments, we refer to it as primary apportionment or primary distribution. And then we say that after that level of apportionment, all service cost centers are those which exist to provide some service to the production cost centers. So the example we looked at, which was about 2 production departments, assembly and finishing, and then 2 service departments, canteen and maintenance. The canteen and maintenance departments are not directly into production of the goods. They're not involved in producing the products we are producing. But they're also in the factory, rendering service to those two departments which are directly into the production, involved in the production of the goods. And because they exist to provide service to the production cost centers, their overhead costs need to be shared among those departments involved directly in producing the goods. So the process of sharing the service cost center overheads to the production cost centers is what we refer to as secondary distribution or secondary apportionment. And that is cool. We've taken examples to illustrate all of that. You can watch the video, and let me say this in passing. Quite a number of you are still not subscribed on the YouTube channel. And in fact, you do so for your own advantage, not for mine, because the semester is quite short. And if you don't take care, you get what we call information overload. You go into that situation. You are being bombarded by this course information assignment here. So you need to get live alerts on what is going on. So when in fact, I was chatting with a few of your colleagues about the fact that I uploaded a tutorial ahead of the quiz, clarifying some issues. I was surprised when they told me, as at even the time I was discussing this with, they have not even heard of it and seen the video, which is quite dangerous. And it is happening because he has never cared to get linked up or hooked onto the information platforms where you can receive alerts of what is going on. So if that is a decision you make, fine, I don't have anything to lose about that. But as a teacher, I just need to tell you about the dangers when you choose to behave like that. Yeah. So you can watch the videos, it's still on YouTube, watch the videos on the overhead allocation and apportionment as we have done, which is chapter 7. Chapter 8 is about absorbing, that's the last stage of the absorption costing process. Absorbing the collected overheads. Now the overheads are collected under the production department. We need to get them from the production department into the products so that the products carry them as part of the cost of the product, based on which we will set the selling price of the product. How do we do that? That's what we are going to learn today. So absorbing production overheads into units, products. The other time we're trying to learn about how typically we cost a product. We're using Abigail's Sobolo business case. And every product costing is just like what we're trying to do. You will get all the direct costs. No doubt about the fact that all the direct costs constitute part of the cost of the product. And when we are doing absorption costing, we are saying that production overheads should also be part of the product cost. So the product cost will be like this. So let's say costs per unit of product. This is the template. You will have direct material cost. So let's say direct material cost per unit. Direct material cost for one sobolo. Let's say it is 1 Ghana or 2 Ghana cedis. One bottle of sobolo, that would be too much. So let's make it 0.8 Ghana cedis. Then direct labor. Direct labor cost per unit of the product. So let's say that is 1 Ghana cedis. Direct expenses. per unit of the product. Let's say that is also 1 cedi. Okay, so this will be the sum of the direct costs. The sum of all the direct costs for 1 unit of the product. In this case, it will be 2 cedis, 80 pesos. The sum of these direct costs is given a special name called prime costs. Prime costs. Right. Then for absorption costing, we have to find production overhead cost per unit. So if we estimate that one to be also, let's say 1 cedi 20 pesos, then the full cost of the product will be 4 Ghana cedis. So the subject of discussion is this. How do we do this? How do we get this? Production overhead costs per unit of the product. In fact, we have finished the biggest part of the process to get to this destination, which is overhead cost centers, overhead allocation, primary apportionment, secondary apportionment. Today, we will get to know how we can sift out production overhead cost for 1 unit of the product and add it to the prime cost to get what we call full cost. So this 4 cedis is referred to as full cost. Full cost. All right.
Sir, please,
So
can you
once we
come
have,
again? Can you repeat what you said again?
I've said so many things, which precisely?
You said the prime cost and adding the overhead to get a full cost.
Okay, so let me repeat it. I said when we want to cost a product, no, you see the products are the same. For example, if it is about bottled water, they look the same. So we find the cost of one and we multiply that cost by the number of bottles, we get a total cost. So the costing, unless each individual product, each individual unit of the product is different, and that's not the case. If you take Sobolo bottles, every one bottle will be the same as the other. So if you get to know the cost of one bottle of Sobolo, for example, then we can know the total cost of the Sobolo we have produced. So normally the costing of the product is done on the unit level, just like I'm doing, the unit level. Even though you can be asked to compute it on a total level, it is usually done on unit level because we can always scale up to get a total cost involved. And this is what I said. For the cost of a unit of the product, we have to look at the direct cost. And the direct costs constitute direct material costs. So if it is about Sobolo, what is the cost of direct material that is going into one bottle of Sobolo? So that's direct cost. If you estimate it to be 0.8 cedis, that is there. Then direct labor. Direct labor is the wages paid to the people who are cleaning the bottles, boiling the Sobolo leaves, grinding whatever needs to be, ground, and bottling and finishing. That's direct labor. We pay for that. If we estimate that one bottle should be charged with 1 Ghana cedi of labor cost, then that is direct labor cost on one bottle of Sobolo. Then all direct expenses, one bottle of Sobolo, direct expenses, how much does it go into one bottle? If you estimate it to be 1 cedi, then the sum of all the direct costs, all of these things are direct costs, direct costs, direct costs. And I said there is no question about the fact that the cost of the product should be made up of its direct cost. That is clear. The sum of all the direct costs is given this name, prime cost. Prime cost. So for this particular illustration, prime cost is equal to 2 cedis, 80 pesos, the sum of 0.8 cedis, 1 cedi, and another 1 cedi. Then for absorption costing, even though overheads are indirect costs, production overheads are also absorbed as if they are direct costs. They are also made part of the cost of the product. And today we'll conclude on how to get production overhead costs per unit. So I just cited this, without going through the process, I just said we should assume that production overhead cost per unit is 1 cedi, 20 pesos. And we'll be able to do that after this lecture. When we add this 1 cedi, 20 pesos to 2 cedis, 80 pesos, we get 4 cedis. And that is what absorption costing calls full costs per unit of the product. And it is based on this full cost that you will load your expected margin. So let's say product costs 1 cedi to produce, 4 cedis to produce. And company policy is, let's say, 20% profit requirement. So we load 20% on this, which will be 4 into brackets 1 plus 20%. This will give us what the price will be like. So 4 into bracket 1.2. 4 times 1.2. What would that give us? Please, I'm doing the lecture with you. So when I ask a question, I need your response.
4.8.
4.8.
Yes.
Okay. So it means that if the product costs 4 cedis to produce,
4.8.
and we expect a profit margin
So
of
it gives us
20%,
4.8.
then we need to sell the product. We need to sell the product at 4 cedis, 80 pesos. Are you okay with this?
Yes, sir.
Good. So that is generally how we cost a product.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And how selling price may be determined if we do profits loading on the cost. Okay, so that's just by the way. You have to understand this framework, because once we're able to finish today's work of knowing how to calculate production overhead cost per unit, one of the requirements that you're supposed to meet is to be able to compute cost for 1 unit of a product, given the information to do that. Okay, so if we have, from the example that we were doing, we had assembly department, and we also had finishing department. These were the 2 production departments. We have finished reapportioning the service cost centers back to the production department. So we had only these ones. We had all the overhead costs under only these 2 departments. So I just want to borrow from the question. At the end of the full distribution, we had the overhead costs for assembly to be 30,233. So let's approximate it, 234. It was 233 point something. So 234, approximately this. And that for assembly was 36,285, approximately. All right. So these 2 departments may be involved in producing several products. So let's say product, just like we're using a sobolo. Abigail was producing sobolo, ice kinky, pie, etc. If you should actually use
Okay,
a
sir.
more realistic example, if you take a company like Guinness, you will see Guinness, you see all the products that Guinness produces. And it happens in the same factory. If you take Coca-Cola, for example, if you take Casapreco, for example, there's a big factory, all of the products they're producing are coming from that factory. So these are the production overhead costs under the production cost centers in the whole factory. Now we have, let's generically treat this. Let's say we have products X, Y, and Z. Products X, Y, and Z. These three products contributed in different ways towards the incurrence of these overhead costs. And in fact, we are going to share these overhead costs to the product. The whole exercise of absorption costing is sharing of overheads. First of all, we did sharing of general overheads to cost centers. We did sharing of service cost centers overheads to production cost centers. And finally, we are still going to share the production overheads to the products. And that ends the process. Okay. We can approach the sharing in two ways. See here, we have two production departments. We can even have more than two. We have the option of sharing the overheads on departmental basis. So we take department A. We share department A's overhead cost to the product. Then we come and take B and share B also to the product. That's one approach. We can also, and sometimes there's a reason why you might have to use this approach or that approach. I will explain that one further. So apart from the departmental based sharing of the overheads, we can also do what is called blanket sharing. We put the overheads of A and B together. So the sum of this and this, what will be the sum? I need you to calculate it quickly. 30,234 plus 36,285. What's the sum? Hello?
Sir, six.
Yes. Yes.
This is 6,500.
Call the figures individually.
66,519.
This is 6,519.
Read the figures individually, please. 65 or 68. Read them like that.
66,519.
66.
Yes, 519.
519.
Yeah.
6651.
Is what you are seeing on the screen correct?
Yes.
Good. Good. So if we go by doing the blanket sharing, you will add these two and get this figure and then share this sum figure to the product XYZ. And once sharing comes in, one thing should surely come to your mind: basis of sharing. Fair basis of sharing. Fair basis. And this shouldn't be anything difficult for you because we have been doing that from day one. Basis. And why we think that basis is fair and why we are using it. Okay, so let's look at the departmental one first. Let's take the example in your book. I think let me get that part of the book open. If you open to page 133, of your text. In fact, the new one, the old one might be on a different page, so you have to find it. You have to find it. Okay. We will use that example to also understand some of the general basis of sharing overheads. So let me open my version of that text. Yeah, me will okay, but you me that's. Okay, so page 133. This is page 133. Okay. So this is a very simple example. Let's use it to illustrate what we are saying. Okay, so you can see the question on your screen. You can also follow along by reading the question from your textbook. PD Limited is a manufacturing company producing products called DAC. PD Limited produces and sells 1,000 DACs in a month. PD absorbs overheads on the number of units produced. Based on past experience, PD Limited estimates its monthly overheads to be as follows. Heating, 8,000, power 2,000, maintenance 5,000, giving us a total of 5,500. So these are the production departments: heating, power, maintenance. It depends on the kind of products they are doing. That will make them have these as production department. But per the question, this is what we have. So just like I showed you from my writing board, department A and F, giving us 30,234, 36,285 respectively, the sum of which is 66519. Similar thing is being showed you here. These are individual production departments and their respective monthly overhead summing to this 55,000. Calculate the overhead absorption rate for PD Limited. Don't worry about the question itself. I'm using it to explain something. Before we come to the solution, let's look at something. Basis of apportionment. Basis of apportionment. Basis of apportionment. Where did I put that in? Basis of apportionment is simply the yardstick based on which we think it is fair to share the production overhead cost. And there are two notable bases. And I will explain why the two are very notable. One is labor hours. So we use labor hours, usually direct labor hours, as the basis of sharing the production overhead costs to the product. The reason is this. In the olden days, most production were labor intensive as opposed to machine intensive. So most of the indirect costs that will be generated in the production process will be labor related. So there was the assumption that, in fact, it was a simplification. The simplification was that since we almost use labor in doing all the things, then any indirect cost that is incurred is caused because of labor activities, and therefore the product that uses more labor, more of the labor activities will generate more of the overhead cost, since the overhead cost is labor related. And therefore, if we use labor hours as the basis of sharing, we will fairly distribute the cost. The product that has the highest of labor hours gets the biggest of the costs in that order. So that one, on one hand, and then machine hours on the other hand, that is the opposite. If the production setup is highly mechanized, more machines than labor, that one is also based on the simplification or the simplified assumption of the fact that since most of the activities we do in the factory are machine related, it follows that the indirect costs that will be generated from machine activities. And therefore, it will be fair that the overhead cost in such environment is shared on the basis of machine hours. So if product A uses this number of machine hours, product B uses this number of machine hours, product C also uses another level of machine hours, based on your level of machine hours, you will get your proportion of the overhead costs, because the overhead costs are largely caused by machine activities. So these are the two traditional bases of sharing overheads to the products. Okay, so apart from this, we can have some other bases as units produced. Unit produced. Using unit produced, the logic is that the indirect costs as incurred in the organization are generated by production of the units itself. So the more we produce, the more overhead costs come. And therefore, it makes sense that we use the number of production. So if product A, we produce more product A than any of the products, then it means product A has contributed to the organization's total overheads more than the two, because the overheads is production units related. So that's the basis, that's the reason why we may use units produced as a basis of sharing the production overheads, on the logic that the production overheads are generated from producing the units. Yes, question.
So what if the organization produces only a single product?
Can you raise your
What if
voice
the
a little? You are speaking
organization
to a crowd.
produces a single product?
Speak well, please. I still can't hear you.
What if the organization produces a single product?
What if the organization produces a single product? Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
that's a question. What do you think? I think that question should be able to, you should be able to give an idea about what the answer should be. What do you think?
So just that single product will bear the total overhead cost.
Exactly. If
Okay,
of
thank you.
all organizations were producing just one product, this idea of sharing and basis will not even come in. One product, you generated all the cost, so take it. So we just spread it on the number of the units. So if we are producing only Sobolo, and we have incurred a total indirect cost of, let's say, 1,000 Ghana cedis. Sobolo is not sharing that 1,000 Ghana cedis overhead with any other product. It is for Sobolo alone. Then if you have 100 bottles of Sobolo, we divide the 1,000 on top of the heads of the 100 Sobolo, and each bottle gets his share. It's as simple as that. But the issue gets a little bit complicated if it is not only sobolo, but there is ice kenke, there is millet juice, there is some other products. And these products may benefit from the overhead cost, or they might have contributed to the overhead cost in different proportions. So we cannot share it flat. We'll talk about where we think they benefit the same way, so we can simplify to share it flat. But in the meantime, I'm just giving the overview of the whole of the idea behind what we are doing in terms of choosing a basis. I've thought about unit produced, machine hours, labor hours. There can be things like percentage of prime cost, percentage of direct wage, but these are the traditional ones: unit produced, machine hours, labor hours. And normally, most questions will be specific on the basis, which is the policy of the company when it comes to absorbing overheads into products. In some few cases where the question will be silent about it, the question will have enough information so that even if the question does not specifically say this is the basis, you should know that this should be the applicable basis. Okay, so these are the two situations. All right, so that's about the basis. Now let's go to the question. Even before the question, let me clarify this. The basis of sharing the overheads, once agreed upon, just like we were computing. Let me go to my drawing board. When we were sharing the general overhead cost, I want to borrow some concepts there. For example, when we're sharing the rent, we computed the rent charge per square area or per floor area, which will then be multiplied by what each individual cost center has as its floor area. And it was computed as a rent charge per floor area. That's not what we are doing now, but I want to borrow something from what we did over there. It was computed as the total rent cost, which I think was total rent cost. It was 15,000. 15,000 divided by the total basis of sharing, which was floor area. The total floor area was 4,000. And then we computed rent charge per floor area to be 3 cedis 75 pesos. So that we multiply this constant figure by what each department has as its floor area, and we get that department's share of the 15,000. Is the same thing that is going to happen when we are sharing the production overheads to the products. When we get a basis, whether it is machine hours or labor hours or units produced or some other thing, we need to get the total machine hours, total labor hours, total unit produced. Then, just like this one, so this becomes the total basis, which links to these things. We also need to get the total of the production overhead cost. Total of the production overhead cost. Then dividing this by this gives us what we call production overhead absorption rate. It is also referred to as production overhead recovery rate. So let me show you something from your textbook. You are seeing this thing, OAR, overhead absorption rate. Overhead absorption rate. So that's the formula. So the three products, I'm assuming we are dealing with three products. Product A, if the basis is labor hours, for example, product A uses 1,000 labor hours to produce. Product B, 2,000 labor hours. Product C, 800 labor hours. Total labor hours then will be 1,000 plus 2,000 plus 800, 3,800. So that becomes our total basis, which is the denominator. Then we have to also get our total production overheads. So if you go back a little, you will see if you are using the blanket approach, then the organization-wide total production overheads will be the sum of the two production departments, giving us 66519. So it will be this 66519, 66519, which will divide by the 3,800. This, for this illustration, is total labor hours from the three products. Of the three products, products A, B, and C, based on the illustration I was given. And this is the total production overheads. Okay, this guy normally is a budgeted figure. The total production overhead is a budgeted figure, and this is the reason. You see, over the course of the accounting period, we normally do final accounts for an organization on a yearly basis. So in the course of the whole year, overheads will continue to be incurred from one point to another. Even at getting to the end of the year, we'll still be incurring some overheads. So because of that way overhead comes in, it will make it difficult for you to get an accurate figure or the real, the on the ground figure for overheads, because it will keep coming from time to time across the whole of the year. So normally we budget for that figure because we cannot wait till the last day of business for us to know the exact amount of overheads the organization has incurred before we do our accounting. No. In fact, in business, we even do all of the things on budgets before. So we'll have budgeted sales, budgeted cost of sales, budgeted profit, budgeted balance sheet. We'll have all of them on budgets. Before, when we go into actual production, the figures that will come, if there are differences, we investigate the differences through what we call variance analysis. Okay, so because of the nature of overheads, normally the overhead figure will be budgeted. It will not be the actual as we have incurred. It will be budgeted. So the true formula for the overhead absorption rate, overhead OAR, overhead absorption rate, is equal to budgeted, and I've explained why it will be budgeted. Budgeted total production overheads divided by, and budget goes with budget, divided by budgeted total basis. So if the basis is machine hours in this case, it will be budgeted total machine hours or budgeted total labor hours, whatever the basis is. So that's the formula. This approach of estimating the overhead charge to a product through budgeted total production overheads and budgeted total basis produces another complication, which is called over absorption of overheads or under absorption of overheads. The fact is this: we will use this technique to say that, okay, the production overhead cost per unit that should be charged to the product should be 1 cedi 20 pesos. This was estimated based on budgeted figures, budgeted total production overheads, and budgeted labor hours, for example. What if the actual that the organization actually incurs or brings forth is different from the budget based on which we assign this figure? And this is about cost. We are assigning cost to a product. So that can result in us over assigning cost to the product or under assigning cost to the product. You need to get this understanding clear. Just understand it so. But this is the good news. I know it will be good news for you. I will not examine you on that level of complication. I will not examine you on the issues of over-absorbed overheads or under-absorbed overheads. We are trying to, or we will assume that in our case, all budgets become the same as the actual. So there's no deviation between budgets and actuals. In that case, there will be no issue of over-absorbed or under-absorbed. That's the assumption we will make, just to simplify the analysis. For your level. Okay, any questions so far about the overhead absorption rate, which is the formula we use to compute the overhead charge that we load onto the product? And all the explanations around it. Any question? Okay, that's good. So let's continue. So we're talking about departmental versus blanket overhead absorption rate. The departmental one is simply like this. If the organization is divided into 2 or more production cost centers, we may decide to absorb the overheads on the basis of the production, the production departments, not to add them before we share. And the reason why we might go departmental is that maybe the departments they are not the same in terms of the activities that happen there. They are quite different. And therefore, the activities that the products undergo in each of the departments are quite different. They are quite different. In that case, it wouldn't make so much sense for you to add the cost of the 2 departments. It will be just like adding banana and cassava. I don't know for what products you will want to actually get from that combination. Okay, so if the departments are so unique, And the activities that the products undergo through each of the departments are also unique. And we might decide that, okay, each department, we have to absorb it cost separate into the product. In that case, we will just do simply as this. When we take production department A, we prepare its own overhead absorption rates and use it to absorb the overheads into the product. Then we come and take B. We prepare its own overhead absorption rates and use it to absorb this cost into the same product. So we have two levels of absorbing the two production overheads. If we think that, oh, to a very large extent, the products are not, or the activities are not too different from themselves, the activities that the product undergo in each of the two departments, and that things are largely the same. If there are differences, only the differences are not too significant. So it will make more sense for us to add them and share than divide and share. In that case, we'll add these two and prepare only one OAR, which we'll use to share this total cost to this. Example will illustrate it better. So let's take an example. And that's the example I read. Okay. So if you go to our example, okay. So calculate the overhead absorption rate for PD Limited. So overhead absorption rate, the formula is budgeted total production overhead over budgeted total activity level or basis. So if we are doing blankets, let me see, yes, if you are doing blanket 55, we are summing all of them. Then the basis, did the question tell us anything about the basis? Yes, PD absorbs overheads based on number of units produced. So that's the basis. So the solution is quite simple. Solution is very simple. Production overhead, organization-wide production overhead of, so budgeted total production overheads is equal to 5,500 Ghana cedis. Budgeted total units of production is equal to total units of production. PD Limited produces and sells 1,000 DAC in a month. So the whole of the figures you're seeing is a monthly budget. So 1,000, 55,000 overheads in a month, 1,000 production in a month. So it matches. So let's see. This is 1,000. So the overhead absorption rate, which is given as budgeted total overheads divided by budgeted total activity level, is equal to 5,500 divided by 1,000, which is equal to 5.5 Ghana cedis. 5.5 Ghana cedis. This, what I'm about to add to this figure is very important. Per unit produced. So for every unit produced, the product will be charged. For every 1 unit of the product, it will be charged with 5 cedis 50 pesos. So that's the overhead cost per unit, 5 cedis 50 pesos. And note this, if the basis of absorbing the overheads is unit produced, then the formula for the OAR produces automatically production overhead cost per unit. If the basis is labor hours, it will produce, assuming this 1,000 were labor hours, then this 5.5 would have been 5.5 cedis per labor hour. So it is not straight away per unit. Because the basis is labor hours, you will get a charge per labor hour. Then if you get a charge per labor hour, you now convert the charge per labor hour into charge per unit. Okay, so one hour is charged, 1 hour of production, or 1 hour of labor hour, 1 hour of labor hours is charged 5 cedis 50 pesos. Then you go and check for one product, how many labor hours are used. So if the product uses, let's say, 1 hour, for example, the product uses 1 hour, 1 unit of the product uses 1 hour to manufacture. And from here, 1 labor hour is charged 5.5. 1 labor hour is charged 5.5. And the product uses 1 labor hour. Then the overhead charge per unit will be the 1 hour which labor uses to produce the product times the charge for 1 hour. The overhead charge for 1 hour, which is 5 cedis 50 pesos, and it will result in 5 cedis 50 pesos ultimately. What if the product uses 2 hours to manufacture? Product uses 2 hours of labor time to manufacture. Overhead charge per labor hour is 5 cedis 50 pesos. Every 1 hour of labor time is 5 cedis 50 pesos. And one product uses 2 of that. Then the overhead costs, which is based on labor time, that will go into one product will be 2 times the 5 cedis 50 pesos. So that's how you convert it from labor hours into charge per unit. Charge per labor hour is not the same as charge per unit. Okay, we may take more examples to illustrate that, but you need to understand it like that in the meantime. So for this simple example, the overhead recovery rate will be 5 cedis 50 pesos per unit. So if we had, for example, already calculated our direct material 0.8, direct labor 1.0, direct expenses 1 cedi, giving us 2 cedis 80 pesos as prime cost, then the production overhead cost per unit in this case will be 5 cedis 50 pesos. This is production overhead cost per unit. And you have to understand that because the basis is automatically unit produced, you'll get a charge per unit of the product, which is what we will be looking for when we want to cost the product. And note that if the basis is something else apart from unit produced, like labor hours, you'll get a charge per labor hours. And then you go and look at how many labor hours go into 1 unit of the finished product and do that mathematics to convert the charge per hour to charge per unit. Good. Okay, so this is a blanket approach. Let's take example 2. Example 2 illustrates more on departmental. It clarifies the issue of departmental and blanket more accurately than the first one. The first one is just a general exercise on the overhead absorption rates. And I think everybody is okay about how it is calculated and what it represents. If any one of you has a question before we take example 2, you can make me know. A question, please. Question. Okay, so let's progress. Example 2.
Sir, question.
Yes, sir. Please, your name.
Sir Kingsley.
Yeah, Kingsley. Let's hear you.
Sir, can you preview your previous your working sheet?
Okay. I should go back.
Yes, I wanted to ask if the budgeted total this thing in the
Kingsley. Hello, Kingsley.
times 12.
Kingsley, your connection is breaking.
Yeah.
Can you come again? Kingsley?
Hello, sir.
Can you repeat yourself?
Sir, can you hear me?
We didn't get you.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm struggling to hear
I said
you.
the budget total units of production.
Total units of production, okay.
The total units of yes, sir. Yes, sir. They gave it per month, and I'm asking, what if they give it per year?
If they give
Are
it
you
per
going to change
year,
the budget?
if they give
Yes,
it
sir.
per year, and you see this question, the focus was on a monthly budget. So we are calculating everything on monthly basis. So this is they are all monthly statistics. But I like the question you asked. Sometimes the question can give you, let's say, the overhead cost for the whole year and give you the units of production as a monthly figure. So monthly production of 1,000. In such a question, we normally assume that the production level moves smoothly. So if 1,000 per month, then all other months will be 1,000, 1,000. So we multiply 1,000 by 12, 12 months in a year to give you the yearly equivalent, which matches the total production overhead, which is given in a year. But if all of them are given in a month or quarter or year, because they match in terms of year, you can proceed and work on it like that. Are you okay? Hello, Kingsley. Okay, so let's move ahead. So I was saying that once you have calculated the production overhead cost per unit, we add it to this, and in this case, we will get, this will be 3. So this will be 8 cedis, 30 pesos.
Okay.
This becomes our full cost per unit.
Okay. Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Sir, I've understood.
Okay. Example 2. Budgeted information relating to 2 departments in a company for the next period is as follows. Overheads are budgeted as follows. So production department, we have machining, assembly. Production overhead costs for each of them, 27,000 for machining department, 18,000 for assembling department. Direct material cost is 67,500 for machining, 36,000 for assembly. Direct labor cost 13,500, 100,000 for the 2. Direct labor hours 2,700 for machining, 25,000 for assembling. Machine hours 45,000, for machining and 300 for assembling. Then the requirement is, what is the most appropriate basis for the absorption of the production overhead cost of I, machining department, and why? This one, we are all going to discuss it together because it's a common sense question. So everybody understands this to some level. So look at the table. We are just using 2 minutes to finish this exercise. Look at the table. If you look at the table, we have two main departments, machining, two main production departments, machining and assembling, where they are budgeted overhead costs. They are here. This is other information, direct material cost, direct labor cost, direct labor. You look at direct labor, it makes common sense that assembling will have to do with more of human activities. It depends anyway. If you go to the automobile companies, assembling will still be machine intensive. Machines kind of assemble the parts. But let's assume it's not that high-tech business. So the assembling is more human related. Human beings putting the parts together. Attaching labels, packing them in boxes and labeling, etc. So it will have to do with more labor activity and therefore more labor hours. Assembling, 25,000 labor hours. In the machining department, even though largely machines are there, it's human beings who operate the machines. And then we have 2,000, compare 2,000 to 25,000. That tells you about what is happening in the various departments. And you see the reverse here in terms of the machine hours. 45,000 machine hours in the machining department and 300 hours in the 300 hours of 300 machine hours in the assembling department. Then looking at these statistics about the two departments, the question is, what is the most appropriate basis for absorbing I, machine department overhead costs, and why? And II, assembling department overhead costs, and why? So everybody should raise their hand and comment. Doreen, are you in class or you have just switched on your device and sleeping? Doreen.
Hi. Please, the answer is machine hours for machine department.
Good. And why?
Because the overhead costs in the machine department are generated by the machining activities.
Okay, that's good. The overhead costs in the machining department will be generated more by machining or machine activities. Even if there are some, some part of the cost generated by other activities, that will be a small fraction. Okay, so that's why it will make sense for us to use machine hours as the basis of sharing the machining department overhead cost. How about II, assembling department? Fortune Agbanyo. Fortune.
Say I'm here.
Yeah, Fortune.
Sir,
Yes, answer the II part.
please, the answer will be direct labor hours.
Direct labor hours, and why?
Hello, sir.
Yes, Fortune, we are listening to you. Why will it be direct labor hours?
Sir, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Please talk. Hello, Fortune.
I said it. And Yeah, and I was saying, okay, I was saying, say, hello.
Yeah, Fortune, we are listening to you.
We can hear you, Fortune.
Okay, I was like direct labor hours.
Okay, that's correct. But why? Why should direct labor hours be the appropriate basis?
Because when it comes to the assembly, it's more of humans that operate this one who assemble the product. Something like that.
Okay. So the assumption is that because the activities there are mainly human activities, the indirect costs that will be generated are also most likely to emanate from human activities. And therefore, we should use human hours as the basis of sharing it. I want your explanation on those things come clear because I can easily ask you a question like that. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, now B, compute the OAR for machining department and for assembling department. And when we do it on departmental basis, we are just using the departmental approach of overhead absorption. Okay, so by that, we take each department. Because the assumption is that each department is separate. We can't put them together. We have to absorb them separately. So when we take machining department, we all know the formula for calculating the overhead absorption rate. So machining department. The formula, machining department OAR. Formula is budgeted total production overhead divided by budgeted total activity level. When you are writing an exam, you have to write some 4. And from the question, budgeted total production overheads for machining department is 27,000. 27,000 divided by total budgeted total activity level. The activity is machining, and the activity level is the number of machine hours. So the number of machine hours in that particular department is 45,000. So everything is exclusive to the department. So we take the department specific production overheads, department specific basis, and the 45,000 will give us 45,000. What would it give us? 27,000 divided by 45,000.
0.6.
0.6. Yeah, 0.6. In other words, 0.6 is 60 pesos. So this will be 60 pesos. It's not complete too. I can foresee that most of you leave your answers like this, and this answer will be short of some marks. So who wants to conclude it?
Per machine hours.
Per
The machine hours.
Good. Per machine hour. When I can your own.
So, bomb I'm kind.
So the per machine hour. The per machine hour means that for every machine hour, we will charge, or every machine hour attracts 60 pesos off the 27,000 overheads. That's how we are sharing it. Every machine hour, we charge you with 60 pesos. So when you multiply this 0.6 by the total machine hours, you have to understand it is equivalent to the 27,000. That is how we are sharing the 27,000. In chunks of 60 pesos for every machine hour. You have to get this practical understanding, very important. Okay, when we go to the assembling department, its OAR will be calculated by the same formula. And the figures involved are 18,300. 18,300. Oh, sorry, not 300. Not 300, because we said for assembling, the appropriate basis should be labor hours, right? So 18,000 divided by 25,000. Sorry about that. I'm getting tired, that's why.
So then no school.
Hey, we should close
I'll
in.
say then
We will close very soon, don't worry.
God bless
So
you.
it will be 18,000 divided by 25,000. Is everybody okay with this?
Yes, sir.
yes,
And
sir.
what would it be? What would the answer be?
0.72
0.72.
per labor hour.
Okay, so 0.72 per labor hour.
Yeah.
It
Say
means that
labor hour.
per labor hour. It means that for every labor hour, you will be charged with 0.72 Ghana cedis. So we are splitting the 18,000 overhead costs into 0.27 on hourly basis. So this 25,000 total labor hours, if you multiply it by this, you will get this. That's the meaning. You have to understand this. Okay. Then if you are using the blanket approach, blanket overhead absorption rate. That one, you know, it is the organization-wide budgeted total production overheads. So all of them summed up. So organization-wide production overheads, which is 27,000 plus 18,000. What would that one be?
45,000 or 5,000.
Please come again.
45,000.
45,000.
Yeah.
45,000. Then we find a basis. On the departmental front, there were two bases. Now that we are using blankets, the logic will be that, oh, what happens in the machine department is not too different from what happens in the assembly department. The activities, if any difference, is very insignificant. That will be the reason why we might want to lump things together. If they are quite unique, it will be not too good to lump them. So when we do blanket, we are saying that, oh, the two departments are quite the same. And it means that the basis will also converge to one thing. So if the basis is like, okay, overall, if you decide the basis to be labor hours, then we use total labor hours. If the basis is decided as machine hours, then we use machine hours. Okay, so that's what you have to do. So for the blanket, we have to come to the determination of one basis, which is the basis we think largely drives the incurrence of the overhead costs. So if you use machine hours, if we use machine hours, then organization-wide level or total machine hours will be equal to the 45,000 in the machining department and the 300 in the assembly department. That would be 45,300, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in that case, our overhead absorption rates will be 45,000 production overhead costs divided by 45,300. And this is the total number of machine hours. What will this give us?
0.99. That is
0.99 labor
per
machine hour.
machine.
machine hour. Good, per machine hour. So 0.99 cedis per machine hour. That is what it will be. If we had decided to use labor hours as the basis, then the total basis will be 2,700 plus 25,000, and that would have generated its own figure. Okay, you can go through the solution to familiarize yourself with the solutions we have produced. Yeah. Okay, so that is okay. So now let's base on this. So you see, this is 0.99 per machine hour, right? So
Yes.
Yes.
if we had, let's go back to the original scenario we were creating. If our direct material is 0.8, direct labor 1 cedi, direct expenses 1 cedi. All right. Now, production overhead cost per unit. We cannot write this 0.99 because this is 0.99 per machine hour. It's not per unit.
Okay.
Okay, so in the question, you will have information on how many hours it takes for the production of 1 unit of the product. So if it takes, let's say, 0.5 hours to produce 1 unit of the product, it takes 0.5 hours to produce 1 unit of the product. And 1 hour of the product, 1 hour of labor time is charged with 0.99 of the overhead cost. How would we convert this to overhead charge per unit? So this will be 0.99 times 0.5. And what would this be? 0.99 times 0.5.
0.495.
0.495.
95.
Okay, so let's say approximately 0.50.
Yes.
Okay, so now because of the multiplication of the charge per okay, please let me clear this possible complication. This is machine hour, right? 0.99 per machine hour. So in the question, we have to track for machine hours it takes to produce 1 product. We are converting this charge per machine hour to overhead charge per unit. So 1 machine hour, we are charged with this. Then we go and find 1 finished product. How many machine hours does it take? So how many it takes in terms of machine hours? to produce one product. So if it takes 0.5 machine hours to produce one finished good, then we can convert this charge per machine hour to charge per unit by multiplying this 0.99 charge per hour, per machine hour, by machine hours it takes to produce one unit. So 0.99 times 0.5, which will give us approximately 0.5 cedis per unit. Per unit. So we would have come to add 0.50 per unit. Another way you can arrive at this approximately 0.50 is to do it this way. If I get 0.99 per machine hour, I can calculate the total overhead charge per machine hour. So the total machine hours for producing all of the units for that particular product. So if you had produced 1,000, you just listen to the explanation. We'll take an example to illustrate. If we produced 1,000 of this particular product, then it took us, let's say, 1,000 machine hours. So charge per machine hour of 99 to get total charge based on the machine charge per machine hour will be 0.99 times total machine hours of 1,000. So this will give you the total overhead that we have. You have been, I mean, that product, the total unit of the product is charged with. So this 1,000 units of the finished product is charged with a total overhead cost of 0.99 times 1,000 units, which will be 9,009. What would that be? 0.99 times 1,000.
990.
990. Good.
Yes.
990. Okay. So this becomes.
The 9 is double.
The 9 is double. But you said 990. So it's what I'm
Yes,
going to.
No.
straight 9. That was what I was talking about.
Okay. So this 990 is the total overhead charge for producing all the units of that product. Now, if this is total units that you have incurred for producing the 1,000 units, then this cost divided by 1,000 will give you the overhead charge per unit. You can also go about it through this indirect way. If your calculations are right, it will converge with this way. So this second explanation is just like the whole of the class. I mean, class taking SBU 307. You are charged with 99 CDs per hour. And let's say we are using 100 hours. So if you are charged 99 per hour, the 99 times the 100 hours will give us the total class, our charge. Then what is the charge per student? So 99 times 100, whatever the figure is, we are coming to share. So that figure divided by the number of people in the class. That's the indirect way. You can also use this direct way. Charge per machine hour, 0.99. Then let's go and look at number of machine hours for producing one unit of the product. Multiply the two, it gives you the same figure. So you can experiment to confirm that. Let's see where we have reached. Cost rep, how many hours do I have?
Cost rep.
Sir, cost rep is absent too. He didn't come.
Huh.
Sewo.
Wait, Johnny.
Okay. I'll be marking the register. Don't worry. So let's look at this thing. So this is the framework that we can use. I've already, lectured you on the framework for computing full cost per unit of a product. Direct material cost, assuming this is the figure, direct labor cost, direct expenses. Then the sum of the direct cost gives us what we call prime cost. That one is skipped in this instance. Then we add the absorbed production overhead costs. Sorry, you see here, I was trying to be categorical. The overhead costs, production overhead costs can be variable production overhead costs. It can be fixed production overhead costs. But don't worry about that. When we move along, I will explain. I don't want to complicate it. So the sum of the two is what we have treated. Production overhead costs, we are now ignoring any division between them in terms of fixed and variable. So production overhead costs, we add this to the prime cost, and then we have our full cost per unit. Okay. So let's do a simple exercise on calculating cost per unit, and then we'll close the lecture. PCM company manufactures, so this is misspelled, this is manufacturers. Manufactures two products, X and Y, in a factory divided into two production cost centers, primary and finishing. The following budgeted data are available. So for the primary department and finishing department, we have allocated and apportioned production overhead costs, 96,000, 82,500 respectively for primary and finishing. Direct labor minutes per unit. Direct labor minutes per unit. So for product X, remember they produce two products. For product X, it takes 36 minutes to produce. It takes 36 minutes in the primary department, and it takes 25 minutes in the finishing department. Product Y takes 48 minutes in primary department and 35 minutes in finishing department. Budgeted production is 6,000 units for product X and 7,500 units for product Y. Production overhead costs are to be absorbed on direct labor hours, direct labor hour basis required. What are the budgeted production overhead costs per unit for products X and Y? We are interested in only the production overhead cost per unit, so that when we are given the direct cost, we can form our full cost per unit. So can you attempt this? And from the way it stands, the question was not specific as to whether we should go departmental in terms of the absorption or we should go blanket. Anytime the question is silent like this, you do what is the easiest. So you can lump them and do blankets. And in fact, in most cases, if the question is silent, it means blankets. If the question wants you to do departmental, it will be very categorical. Okay, so A says, what are the budgeted production overhead costs per unit for product X and Y? And then B is giving you the prime cost data for you to compute the full cost per unit. Okay, so now let's look at the solution. Let me explain the solution. We may have to retake it if the need be. So if you look at it, what we have to do, the requirement for solving this question is just know we already have the production overheads. as 96,000 and 82,500. Even if you decide to treat them departmental, you still have that information. Now, the direct labor costs. Sorry, direct labor hours. Direct labor hours. Because the question said overheads are absorbed on the basis of direct labor hours. So we need to calculate, even if you are doing a departmental, for primary department, the production overhead cost is this. What is the matching overhead cost? Total overhead cost. Sorry, matching labor hours, total labor hours. Labor hours was given in minutes. So labor hours that X is generating in primary department is 36. Y in the same department is 48 minutes. So we have to convert the minutes into hours. Converting 36 minutes into hours, what would it be? 36 minutes in hours. This one is basic mathematics, so I can call any one of you. Tamara, your microphone is already on, so talk. Tamara in class.
So I'm in class.
Tamara, 36 minutes. The question gave us, we want to find the total labor hours in primary department.
Okay,
this is primary department. X is generating 36 minutes. We need to convert this to hours. Y is generating 48 minutes. We need to convert this to hours. If you convert 36 minutes to hours, what would you get? Tamara, is your question?
Say, I'm finding it. I will answer later.
Okay. Okay, Tamara, if you are ready, tell us. We are listening. Don't worry, just tell us any figure you get, okay? We will work it together, but we want you to lead the discussion. Have you finished?
3.
3. Okay, so
Say 0.6.
36 minutes.
0.6
hours. Tamara had 3. And someone is also saying 0.0. Okay, so now let's all see it. It doesn't really matter the 3 or 6. That's not the point. What matters is that Tamara with 3 did some calculations based on how she understands things. 0.6 also did some calculations. Whether this is the correct one or that's beside the point. I think that's the reason why most of you don't talk in class. All of you are correct. So now let's all reason together. 1 hour is equivalent to 60 minutes, right? And I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong?
Right.
You are correct.
All right. Correct.
You are correct.
So you can go through this primary exercise, and we all did some of these things when we were at the primary school, or at least at DHS.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm just recalling our GHS knowledge. So this one, we are not even doing cost and management accounting. We are doing primary. We are doing GHS work. 1 hour is equivalent to 60 minutes. 36 minutes. So the question gave us 36 minutes. Good. 36 minutes is equivalent to what? We don't know it in hours, yes. But you know something that they say that we know 36, if 60 gives 1, 36 will give less, right? And they say something, if less, more divide. 36 over 60 times 1. This is how they do it. Tamara, have you forgotten?
No, sir.
You have forgotten?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So 36, so basically which is 36 over 60. 36 over 60 will give us what?
0.6.
Okay. 0. Yes. 36 36 divided by 60. I just want to confirm on my own calculator. That is 0.6. Correct. 0.6. That's 0.6. So let me go back to the question and see something. So x, 1 unit of x. Remember the headings. Every part of the question should be read with the mind to understand what the question says. Minutes per unit. So this is 1 unit of x. It takes 0.6 hours in primary department. We want to calculate the total hours in primary. Then let's do the same exercise for y. Tamara, you do the same thing. Product y spends 48 minutes in the primary department. Convert the 48 minutes to hours.
That's 48 over 60.
And you can borrow. Hello?
0.8.
Yeah, 0.8.
0.8. Okay. So now let's see. In the same department, primary, 2 products are passing there with their own hours. Product X, 0.6, right? Times the number of units. Each unit will spend 0.6 hours. Times the number of units that will produce. We'll come to check the number of units. Y is spending 0.8. 0.8, right? Times the number of units that will produce. Budgeted production is 6,000 units of X and 7,500 for Y. So we come back, this is 6,000, this is 7,500. So this will generate the total hours that that is accumulated under primary department. 0.6 times 6,000 gives us how many hours?
So 6,000, you've done it.
3,600.
It's 6,600.
Oh,
3,600.
0.
No, you omitted 1 0. You're supposed.
Okay, so good. So this one is 6,000. Is it correct?
Yeah. 3,000. The answer will be 3,600.
3,000. The answer will be 3,600.
3,600. And how about this one? 0.8 times 7,500.
6,000. 6,000.
6,000. Okay. So the bottom line will be 6,000 plus, that will be 9,600, right?
Sure.
Yep.
So this will be the total labor hours in primary department. And this is how you have to derive it.
Okay.
And by this, you should also be now thinking of the various styles that the questions may come with. Some questions can be very friendly. They might have given you the total labor hours under each of the departments straight away. Or at worst, would have given you the hours and not in minutes for you to do conversion. But even if it gives you in minutes to convert to hours, it is still testing you of primary knowledge. So the question by that nature cannot be classified as difficult. I just need to understand that the question can come with all of these simple calculations, which you need to be on top of. Okay. So if this is the total number of hours, then the overhead absorption rate. Hello?
Monica has raised the hand.
Oh, Monica, talk. Monique.
It's a
Monica.
mistake, please. It's a mistake.
Hello, Monica.
Say it's a mistake.
It's a mistake.
Yes.
So you have not raised your hand.
No, please.
No problem. I'll get you a question to answer. I know you want to answer some question. Okay, so 9,600 total labor hours. We know that the overhead absorption rate is the budgeted total production overheads divided by the total, budgeted total labor hours in this case. The budgeted production overheads in the primary department was 96,000. 96,000 divided by the total basis, 9,600. 9,600. So what will the OAR be? 96,000 divided by 9,600.
10.
Okay, so 10 CDs.
It's
It is not complete.
per labor hour.
10 CDs per labor hour. So every labor hour of the product will be charged 10 CDs. But this is labor hour. So how about the products themselves? We know that product X, 1 unit of product X requires, let's go back to the question to be clear. Direct labor minutes, okay. Direct labor in minutes, that is required to kind of finish the product in the primary department. It's 36 minutes. When converted to hours, that is 0.6 hours, and this is 0.8 hours. So it takes 0.6 hours for the product to finish in the primary department. Product X to finish in the primary department. And if it takes 0.6 labor hours for the product to complete in primary department, and 1 labor hour is charged 10 cedis of the overhead cost, then the overhead costs, not per hour, but per unit of X, will be 0.6 times 10. That's the explanation I gave for the first illustration we were doing. So what would that be?
6.
6.
That would be 6.
Yes.
Okay. Another way that you could have done the same thing is that if 1 labor hour is charged with 10 cedis, then let me get the total charge to the total production of X in the primary. The total charge will be this 10 cedis per hour times the total hours, 3,600. So 3,600 times 10 will be 36,000. 36,000 divided by the total number of production of X, which is 6,000. What would this also be?
6.
It will also be 6.
Yes, 6.
Okay. So this buttresses that long talk I was doing, and I knew the talk will not really explain it well. So with these figures, you are now arriving at the various ways you can do the same thing. This is charge per hour. Go and multiply this by hour for producing 1 unit of the product, 0.6. It will give you the same as if you calculate the total charge to the total production and divide it by the total number of production. So that will be 6. So now product X, overhead costs, production overhead costs, that will be allocated to 1 unit of product X will be 6. And we can do same exercise for Y. We can do same exercise for Y, because if you do for primary, we are in the same primary department. We have done for X. We are done for product X. So we can do the same thing for product Y. Product Y, 10 cedis per labor hour. And it takes 0.8 hours to manufacture 1 unit of the product. 10 times 0.8 will be what? Is it 8?
Yes, please.
It will be 8.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have the two products partly accounted for in terms of the overhead charge. Now for product X, we have seen the portion that is coming from primary. For product Y, we have seen the portion of overhead cost that is coming from primary. And remember, we have 2 departments. We are treating them departmentally. So we go to the other department is finishing. In the finishing department, we do similar exercise. This is also minutes. This is minutes. We convert these minutes to hours. These minutes also to hours. And then we find the total hours. Because in the finishing is the same level of production, 6,000 x 7,500 y. So we multiply the hours here by the number of units, we get a total hours. We do it for y, we get a total hours and add the 2. So let's run through the solution because we have done one part. The other part is the same. Okay, so solution. Total direct labor hours, 9,600. And we have understood the workings. We converted the 36 minutes to hours and multiplied by the total units of production to get the total hours, both for X and for Y. And then we sum the hours from X and Y to give us the total hours. And then we had 9,600. If you go to the drawing board, we have all seen those calculations. We have seen those calculations. This is to show us the conversion from 36 minutes to an hour equivalent, 0.6. And then we multiplied this 0.6 by the level of production, which gave us the total hours involved in producing 6,000. We did same for Y, because Y also passed through the same department. We get total hours of 9,600 in the primary department. So that is what you are seeing by this calculation, by the whole of these calculations. All right. So when you are reading the text, this understanding should help you understand what is there. We do the same thing for Y. Sorry, for the other department finishing. So total direct labor hours in finishing, we convert the 25 minutes to hours, multiply by the level of production, and that will be for X. We do same for Y and add the 2. So that will generate 6,875 hours. When we divide the total production overhead cost by the total labor hours, we'll get the overhead recovery rate. So if you look at here, you will get for primary cost center, this is the charge we got, 10 cedis per hour, which we converted to 6 cedis per minute. For Y, it was 10 cedis per hour and then 8 cedis per unit. For finishing, this will generate 12 cedis per labor hour and it will convert to 5 cedis per unit. For Y, it will be 12 cedis per hour converted to 7 cedis per unit. So what is going to happen is that if we take product X, we take the charge from primary and add it to the charge from finishing. So it will be 6 plus this 5. So the overhead cost that will be charged to product X from the two departments will be 6 from primary and 5 from finishing, which will give us 11. And that for Y is 8 from primary and 7 from finishing, which will give us 15. So we now know the production overhead cost per unit of product X and per unit of product Y. So now if we are given the prime cost data, direct material is 12, direct labor is 20, direct expense is 2, giving us a prime cost of 34, we just add the production overhead cost per unit. So X will add 11 to this 34. Okay, so this solution is not even complete. We have to add 11 to this 34. This 34 is only the prime costs. And you can know it from the question. So this solution was not complete. We add this 11 to the 34, which will give us 45. And add this 15 to this 35.5, which will give us 50.5. Are you okay?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
Good. So when you go home, please go over what we have done. I'll get the video uploaded in few minutes time. Go over it. You can relax, go and rest, find something to eat. Immediately you wake up, you can watch the video, kind of go over everything we have done with your question beside you, trying to assimilate the concept. And then put everything aside, just take the question and resolve the question and see if the concept has gotten in. All right, any question? Any question, please?
No, sir. No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, so if there is no question, this is where we end the lecture. And please tell your colleagues who don't attend the online lecture. I have 30
The
students in
course rep.
class.
The course rep.
Course rep was never here. And again, before I forget, please, it will be good that you subscribe to the channel ahead of time. So any tutorial I do, because it was very, very disturbing that
Sir.
I spent nights and did nice tutorial ahead of a quiz so that students can understand some few things to help them in the quiz. And some sections of the students never heard of it, never made use of the tutorial, which is going to affect them in their performance in the quiz. Yes, sir. Gilbert.
Some of us also joined using others' phones. So we are
Some of
sharing.
you are doing what?
Some of us also joined the class using others' phones. So kind of we are sharing.
Some of you are using other people's phones.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you don't have phones for yourselves.
Our phones are off.
Your phones are okay, so it's a temporal problem, right? Okay, so do collabo.
Yeah,
If it helps,
do it
fine.
one. Sometimes one.
Yes, it's collabo.
Okay, so let's try to let's try to get the best of the situation and pass well. That's all I'm saying. Get the
Okay, sir.
information so that you do not sit there and information is passing by you, only to go and see that, oh, if I had listened to this tutorial, I would have done very well. That will be very, very painful. All right, so let's help ourselves. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Sir, you are the best.
You
Love
are
you.
welcome.